James Dunlap, and this is my testimony. You can choose joy, and that's a good choice to make.
Amen. You're not defined by the things that happen to you.
I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I moved out to Arizona back in 2003 to pursue a career in gaming, actually. I wanted to be a game designer. But then I met my wife, Regina Dunlap, and she introduced me to the church and really introduced me to Christ. My family have always been spiritual. My parents went to church when they were young, and they never forced me to go because they were forced to go when they were younger. So as a result, I never went to church up until I met my wife. And that's when I really started to know the nuts and the bolts of my salvation. I'd been around, even though I never went to church, I had church experiences, funerals, weddings, things like that. So it didn't really scare me, or it didn't really shock me. And actually, I rather enjoyed the energy. That's why I've been here for so long.
You were just recently filled with God's Holy Spirit. Can you describe that experience?
Yes. During that time, I was just pondering, am I worthy? Am I worthy to be happy? Am I worthy to, want the things that I want, to be able to take a breath? Actually, I was really thinking about, am I worthy to take a breath? Have I done enough after my ordeal with my family? And at that time, God said, yes, I'm worthy of it. And this warmth that I can't even describe just came all over my body. And that was it. It was warm, it was light, it was beautiful.
Okay, so you have a powerful testimony on the road to forgiveness after losing your father. What were the circumstances surrounding how your dad passed?
Well, back in 2019, during the Christmas holidays, my mother and father, my mother was actually on her way out of town. She was going to go visit her cousin in Alabama. My dad didn't want to go, so he decided to stay home. About a week before, or actually that Monday before they were going to leave, my dad's daughter, my sister, came up after not being present for about 5 years or so. She had lived with them and then left, abruptly, and didn't say a word for 5 years. Then all of a sudden she just came back that Monday. My dad was super excited because he just wants to love on his daughter. And my mom was happy because she got to see my dad happy. That Thursday, my sister did go ahead and take my mother to the airport. And then the next day, after I spoke with my dad, after she had taken him to brunch or breakfast, that's when she decided to kill him. And from what we understand, it was because of she was in a desperate place where she needed some place to live. She created this particular facade when she's dating someone, and she wanted to say that, hey, you have some place to stay with me. So we don't really know the ins and the outs of why she did what she did, but it's clear, after it was all said and done, my dad had passed away, and he didn't defend himself. Which he could have, because he's a retired police officer. So he definitely was capable of doing so, but did not, because he did not want to hurt his daughter.
So, did she have a history of mental illness?
If she did, we didn't know. We've heard stories and rumors that she wasn't quite right, but never really, really clarified anything. And to be honest, this is my sister from my dad's previous marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even meet her until I was 13 years old,
okay.
Or actually about 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And even that being said, there was some even guilt that I had during that process, because if I would have never expressed, am I going to be an only child forever? Am I ever going to have nieces and nephews and things like that? Mm-hmm. And then that's when my mother decided to, ask my dad to introduce us.
Wow.
So, and then, coming to meet her, found out she was pregnant with, already had a kid and was pregnant with another, my niece and my nephew. And, I was filled with pride that, I got a chance to be an uncle. anything that my sister needed, if whether she needed, help with the move, which I was glad to do. She needed an ear to talk to, I was glad to do that. We didn't communicate a whole bunch, but, when we did, it felt genuine. Even to the point where my wife and my sister really bonded too. When they met, she kind of considered her a sister. My dad was the rock of our family. Everyone looked to him for leadership. He is the second oldest of 5 children. And even with my mom's side of the family, they also looked to him for guidance and help and things of that nature. So the rock is gone. My daughter, who's adopted, she had a chance to have a grandfather. And then, we got a chance to go to Cincinnati for the holidays. And she got a chance to, spend time with her granddad, and they were buddy and called each other even, often, even after that holiday was over. And that was taken away from her. It just impacted us in a huge way.
So how are you coping, like, with the grief, with the anger, Have you had to seek professional help?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
When everything went down day one, the moment that I knew my dad was gone, I started my work. I already, had in my mind, to forgive, to try to do the things that my dad would have wanted me to do, to make sure that, things were prepared, to make sure that things were taken care of properly. My mother was taken care of properly. His mother, who's still alive, was taken care of properly. His brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews. I mean, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was supported, and even though a rock was gone, that I could kind of be there to be, another rock in another way.
Now, James, I can't help but notice that you're talking about everybody else. But what about you?
With me, I really had to, because my nature, I'm a supporter. But I really had to deep get counseling myself, which I still go through counseling now. And the other thing that I focused on throughout the entire process, and God just kind of whispered this in my ear, choose joy.
Some people, instead of dealing with it, they make themselves really busy. But so have you allowed yourself to sit in the pain, and then deal with it and let it pass, or did you make yourself busy?
I didn't. Whenever a feeling, those emotions came up, I dealt with them then. I didn't wait. I didn't delay. I didn't want to procrastinate on that. If my feeling radar went off, that was my indicator. Okay, deal with it now. Whether I need to cry, whether I need to laugh, whether I need to, call someone.
Take a drive,
whatever it needed to be. I just wanted to make sure I dealt with it then and there.
That's really good advice. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me when you were talking is that you said your dad could have retaliated, but he didn't. And it's like you've taken on that too.
Yeah. Even with that being said too, going through the legal process, my mother and I, even though this was a crime that was punishable by death, we didn't want to go there. We made it a point to not go there because it wasn't fair to her children. Her children didn't do anything wrong, so we didn't want to do that and have that perpetuate continuously. We wanted to stop it here. So
now, did you ever want to confront her? Or no, not really.
Yes and no. I mean, a part of me always wants to know why did you do this?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I'm just going to be honest, I don't know if I would believe anything she would have to tell me anyway, and I have to accept that. So therefore, because I have accepted that, it's not as high on my priority list.
And you know what my dad always say? When you don't understand what someone has done, you're probably not going to, so just leave it alone.
Yes. Actually, one of those a detective, and I'll never forget that he said this, that, irrational people do irrational things. And you can't rationalize irrational people.
Because you're trying to come up, okay, make this make sense. Does that bring closure?
It brings closure to a point where, because I'm not so focused on it, and I've accepted the facts of what they are, that's how I can have closure with it. And I can, try to celebrate my dad instead of, mourning at how he passed.
So what are your hopes, or even a message that you could give someone who might be facing something similar?
To continue to choose joy. And it's not even an easy choice to make. There were definitely days where I didn't want to choose joy. I wanted to be mad. I wanted to be sad. It's okay to feel that way. But I still made the choice to choose joy.
Yes, I love that. So, would you say you're like 100% in the forgiveness process, or?
Yes, I to be honest, I have let it go. I have let it go. As soon as we were able to get justice for him, I let it go. Because that's all that at that point I was focused on throughout the 3 years after he had passed. We were waiting for trial. And throughout COVID, throughout a judge change or a Democratic judge change that happened in Cincinnati, where all the Republicans were voted out, Democrats were voted in. That delayed the process even further. Of course, a couple of other legal things, with the defense. But once we were able to get justice, I let that go.
I really feel like you're a remarkable person.
Wow.
Because, I think that would leave someone so angry. And I don't see that, like, not even a hint of it, that's really remarkable. I mean, you really could be a support system to people that have faced these kind of things.
I never really kind of saw myself as that way. I just didn't want to let grief rule me that way. My dad wouldn't appreciate that. My dad would want me to live and want me to live my life and make sure that I have some resemblance of happiness in my life. That's why he worked so hard all his life was to make sure that I was good. And I didn't want to desecrate my dad's memory in that way. So I really focused on just trying to just choose joy and to bring people into it as much as I can.
Now, it was important for me in like preparing for this interview to not just talk about that. You know what I mean? Your dad deserves more than an interview where you're only talking about what happened to him, because he was more than what happened to him. So tell me a little bit about your dad's legacy.
Well, my dad was a Cincinnati police officer. He was a beat cop throughout his entire career for 27 years. Served his community well, multiple communities. He actually started in the community where he grew up in, and then he was transferred to other communities where at a particular point he was just well known throughout the city. Everybody knew who Skip was. Which was very, very strange growing up, because I'm like, how do they know you, Dad? What's going on? I don't know these guys. And so that's where it would go. And but it was very he was a good man. He was a very good man. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good man. He loved fiercely. His attitude toward policing, he actually had the same attitude with his family. He just wanted to serve and protect them. Especially being the oldest male of the family, that he felt that was his role. So that is my dad's legacy in a nutshell. Just a good man.
What would you say is your best memory with your dad?
My best memory of my dad probably was a couple years before he passed away. We're coming from a camping trip. My wife and I and my mom and dad, we went up north and went camping. And on the way home from camping, it was just Dad and I in the car, and we were listening to music. And for whatever reason, my dad wanted to understand hip hop. You know, growing up, hip hop was not allowed in my house, and it isn't because it was like a secular thing or anything like that. I just didn't appreciate the messages that were put toward there. So hip hop, hardcore hip hop was really kind of banned from my house up until I became an adult, of course. And then on the way home, that's what we did. We listened to hip hop, and I was explaining different artists and explaining different songs and what the messages were behind them and things like that. And that was really the first time I think that, well, not really the first time, but a rare instance where I felt like my dad was really trying to get to know me and kind of know where my headspace was and what was important to me.
What was one of the biggest obstacles you think your dad had to overcome?
The huge obstacle was retirement. After he had retired from the force, after 27 years, he never really stayed retired. He actually continued to do contract work. He worked security for the Great American Ballpark that had just opened, did the first opening season there. And he left there, ended up doing security work for the EPA. So he never really kind of stayed retired up until my dad's health started to kind of decline a little bit. He had essential tremors, things like that. And since he was contracted to carry, his shooting ability was, poor. So then he had to really kind of retire. It really, it's a shame that by the time he retired, that he was going to really kind of focus his time and energy on my mother, since they never really had a chance to really connect in that manner because he was always at work. But right before, things were kind of going in that direction. There you go.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of parents at our congregation who their children are police officers, and what is that like? Is that to be a child of
A cop?
yeah? What is that? Do you feel protective? Do you feel anxious or scared for them, or what was that like?
Growing up in that environment, and my dad worked nights. I never saw him at night. He always worked nights. He slept through the day. I always was prepared to get that late night phone call saying that something happened to him while he was on the force. I understood that, I'm an extension of my dad, so to an extent, I'm different, but still an extension. So therefore, I wanted to make sure that I upheld myself so I didn't embarrass him because he was a face of the community as well. Understanding the ins and outs, and even great advantage is that I'm a black man, and black men and police sometimes don't mix. So he understood that too, so he taught me how to deal with the police, how to conduct myself in front of them so I could make it back home safely.
That's interesting because in a way it almost seems like in regards to the subject of death, because your dad was a police officer, you had a different level of kind of being prepared because like you were saying, you were a child always waiting. So that's kind of odd, if you really sit with that.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I was always waiting for it. It's just something that if it happened, I wouldn't be surprised. My mother felt the same way, that, if she got a call, and she got calls here and there, saying that he was hurt, he was injured, broke a leg, broke an arm, something like that. Go to the hospital, see on him, and, come back home and then make sure he's taken care of, and then, go back out there and do it all over again. But it was just one of those things that it was in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. I was glad that once he retired, I thought I could kind of put that down.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, life works differently, so.
Well, it's funny because, I was telling you how I feel like you're really a remarkable person with the way that you've handled it. But then, so was your dad, because, he chose an occupation where he was willing to give up his life for others. Mm-hmm. So, to end the interview, how do you think your dad would like to be remembered?
As someone who served and protect not only his community, but his family. Again, he loved this family fiercely, would do anything for them, whether, spend money, spend time, be a listening ear, giving good advice to keep someone out of trouble, or go to jail. He was just always there and always dependable and always the rock. My name is James Dunlap, and this is my testimony.